Today we talk the release of the Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword, the special edition Legend of Zelda Joy-Con, we'll take a close look at the new Zelda Loftwing Amiibo, and so many other headlines that will have to enable Turbo Mode on today's edition of Me Weekly. Let's do this! Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Me Weekly, this time for Friday, July 16th, 2021. I'm Hero TJ, coming to you from Taipei, Taiwan. This episode is so jam-packed with headlines, I'm gonna forgo the rest of the usual segments so we can take more time on what I really want to talk about, the special edition Legend of Zelda Joy-Con that released today, as well as the Zelda and Loftwing Amiibo. But before we get to that, I'm gonna set this show to turbo so we can shotgun our way through several stories that I want to spotlight, starting with a collaboration between Nintendo and a Swiss luxury brand by the name of Tag Heuer, sorry, I don't recognize this company. I'm not much of a jewelry guy. But in any event, they've joined forces to create a Mario-themed smartwatch. This stylish timepiece features unique animations of Mario and various ways of telling the time. Tag Heuer themselves describe it as a watch like no other in a daring creative style. Only 2,000 units will be produced, and get this, they sell for $2,150. And not surprisingly, they're already sold out. So hopefully if you really wanted to get a hold of one of these and you had money burning a hole in your pocket, you managed to nab one. As I said, I'm not much of a watch guy, so this does nothing for me. And if I had an extra $2,000 to drop, I certainly wouldn't spend it on a watch. But that's just me. On the subject of spending way too much money on Nintendo items, last Friday, an early variant of the Legend of Zelda NES cartridge, sealed, mind you, broke records for selling at auction for a jaw-dropping $870,000. Even more shockingly, that record was short-lived, because that very same weekend, a near-perfect condition sealed copy of Super Mario 64 sold at auction for $1,560,000, smashing the previous record set by Legend of Zelda just a few days prior. I don't know who has upwards of $1 million to spend on N64 games, but congratulations to the winners. On the Metroid front, Volume 3 of the Dread Report is now available, and this edition breaks down the 7 points that define 2D Metroid games. I'll leave a link in the description so you can read it for yourself, but to pique your interest, I'll bullet point those 7 points for you right here. The first is Samus Aran herself, followed by the Metroid species. The next discusses the 35 years of history, followed by exploration-based gameplay, then arsenal and abilities that grow, a fascinating revelation about the mysterious Chozo, and finally, the threat of the X-Parasite. There's also some noteworthy details about Samus's biological fusion suit, and all this serves to really ramp up hype and excitement for Metroid Dread, which as a reminder releases on October 8th of this year, the same day as the Nintendo Switch OLED model. And the super cool new Samus and Emmy Amiibo. But they won't be alone. It looks like they're gonna be in some ominous company, as the Dark Samus and Ridley Amiibo from the Super Smash Bros. Series are slated to release on the same date. Pre-orders are already live. It appears the Dark Samus reprint will be exclusive to Best Buy, while the Ridley reprint will be exclusive to GameStop, and both will retail for $15.99. It's not presently known what Dark Samus and Ridley do when tapped into Metroid Dread, but one can assume they will function in some way with the game given the timing of the Amiibo reprints. This story comes courtesy of Jackson Tap on NintendoWire.com. There's no shortage of Smash Bros. Clones out there. The next challenger joining the battle is Nickelodeon, with their new mascot-based platform fighter, Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl. It features characters from their popular series spanning their entire catalog, such as Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, The Loud House, Ren and Stimpy, SpongeBob SquarePants, Ah Real Monsters, Wild Thornberrys, Hey Arnold, Rugrats, Invader Zim, Danny Phantom, and the promise of more surprises to come. The trailer showcases several stages inspired by the various shows, and it's scheduled to release fall of this year. I personally have a pretty strong fondness for a number of Nickelodeon shows, but I'm not really sure that this game is up my alley. If I want to play a game like Super Smash Bros., I just play Super Smash Bros. But let me know in the comment section below if this is something that interests you. And the final headline, before we take a look at the sweet special edition Legend of Zelda Joy-Con, an intrepid intrepid fellow who goes by the name VK suspects that he may have permanently solved the Joy-Con drift problem, which could not have come a moment too soon if you ask me. I'd like to keep these special edition Legend of Zelda Joy-Con functioning for the foreseeable future. On his channel, appropriately titled VK's channel, VK describes his journey to discover the source of Joy-Con drift and his eventual solution. I watched the video in its entirety. It's actually really fascinating. A lot of work went into it, so I'm going to leave a link in the description. I do encourage you to check it out. I have not attempted this fix on my own, which, just to summarize very briefly, involves increasing the pressure between the outer shell and the joystick itself by just simply adding a 1mm piece of cardboard about equal to a business card. And that seems to do the trick. He demonstrates it fairly convincingly in the video, so give it a watch. I have not tested this for myself, but I do have 8 wildly drifty Joy-Cons, so when I do, I'll let you know how it turns out. And now the moment you've been waiting for. The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD releases today. I really enjoyed my time with Skyward Sword when it first released for the Nintendo Wii. I remember very vividly thinking this might be the best Legend of Zelda game ever made, but it's not the most fun I've ever had playing a Legend of Zelda game. I can't exactly say if I stand by those feelings now. That was 10 years ago, and obviously that was pre-Breath of the Wild, as well as a few other Zelda titles. But when I reflect back on the game, even though there's a lot to love, and there are a lot of highlights, and I didn't have any problem with the motion control. Well, I shouldn't say no problems. Once in a while, something wouldn't respond the way that I wanted to, but it wasn't really a very significant detriment to my experience. But for some reason, when I reflect back, the negative aspects of the game do hold a stronger place in my mind, such as how intrusive Fi could be, or how bothersome it is to have to fight the imprisoned so many times. And as we talked about in last week's edition, a lot of that has been dealt with. I did have a chance to play it for about an hour today, and I did certainly take advantage of being able to speed up the text and skip some of the cutscenes. I got a chance to run a few of my own physics tests on Link, and I got to experiment with motion control versus button control. So based on these super early impressions, I will say that button controls are kind of garbage, and it's mostly because of the camera. The right joystick is used for operating the sword if you're not using motion controls, but if you are using motion controls, you can use the right joystick to freely move the camera around. You can still freely move the camera around if you're using button control, but you have to depress the L shoulder button. And it's just kind of really obnoxious. And the most obnoxious thing about it is you can't sprint and operate the camera at the same time because you use the same thumb to do both. I found myself even getting itchy with my index finger wanting to reach over and hold down the sprint button so that I could still freely move the camera. I'm gonna have to play around with it and get a little bit more accustomed to it. Oh, and when I was trying to aim the diagonal strikes with the joystick, it was just not happening. No matter what I did, I couldn't get them to go in the exact correct line of attack that was required to chop down the logs in the tutorial. And I tried like, I don't know, 30 or 40 times, at least 30 or 40 different swipes. And that's actually what motivated me to switch it to motion control. And once I did that, I was able to slice it right away. Although motion controls is not without its fault either. I'm gonna say this flat out, this is inferior to the Wii version, just so you know. The Wii had a sensor bar, which gave the unit a pretty good indication where you were in the space. You can recenter whenever you want on the Switch with the Y button, which is fast and accessible. However, my controls got inverted a bunch of times because I was doing a downward swipe, realized that my cursor had drifted a bit, and then because I was at the bottom of the strike when I depressed Y to recalibrate, I guess my controller was upside down. So when I swung up, it did a downward strike, and when I swung down, it did an upward strike, which took then another Y depression to recalibrate. Pretty annoying. So in fact, I've had more problems with controlling the sword in the first hour of this game than I did in the entire game with the Wii version. But please remember to just take this for what it's worth. I do imagine that some of this is just growing pains, and as I acclimate a little bit more to using it with the Joy-Cons, the experience will undoubtedly improve, and I'm committed to going back and forth and experimenting with buttons and Joy-Con as more of the game's functions unlock to me and I have the opportunity to experience motion controls in different ways. Now let's talk some Amiibo! Zelda and the Loftwing Amiibo released today alongside the game, although unfortunately, Nintendo confirmed to IGN that the Zelda and Loftwing Amiibo were impacted by shipping delays, resulting in only a small portion of stock on launch day. The statement reads, "The Legend of Zelda Amiibo figure is currently impacted by unforeseen shipping delays. As a result, only a small portion of Zelda and Loftwing will be available on its scheduled July 16th launch date. Additional shipments are delayed until August. We will ship additional Amiibo to retailers as soon as they arrive." Here in Taiwan, we're really just a 2-hour jaunt from Japan, and there doesn't seem to be any such stock issues here. My lovely and wonderful wife went out this morning to scope out the Amiibo situation for me at Taipei Main Station, where there's a good handful of stores that carry Switch accessories, Amiibo, Joy-Con, all the like, where she managed to procure for me not only the Zelda and Loftwing Amiibo, but also the special edition Zelda Joy-Con. While I wouldn't say the shelves were overflowing with them, each store did have a few available, at least upon opening. This is what it looks like in the box. Even though the Amiibo itself is on the somewhat larger side, there's nothing unusual about the box. It's the same scale as your typical Amiibo packaging. Let's do a quick unboxing here so we can check out the figure itself. Hiya! That was quick. And I am happy to report the figure looks fantastic. The paint job is impressive. The sculpt is really detailed. As I expected, it is one of the larger Amiibo. It stands quite tall and quite wide. For reference, here's it in comparison to the Link's Awakening Amiibo. But while the sum of the Amiibo is bigger than most, Zelda herself is quite small in comparison to, say, the Smash Brothers or Breath of the Wild Zelda. All told, it's a gorgeous piece in my opinion, and a very welcome addition to the collection. For those of you who did manage to get your pre-orders in, but unfortunately aren't able to get a hold of it today, I say rest assured when you do get it, you will not be disappointed. As far as functionality is concerned, when you first start Skyward Sword HD, the ability to scan Amiibo is not available. You have to progress to a certain point in the game. So I did. We already know what Zelda and her Loftwing do. They allow you to travel back to the sky at any point, even from dungeons, which is pretty cool, but what I was most curious about was to see if any other Amiibo have functionality in the game. Now, I didn't exhaustively scan every single one, but I scanned a bunch of different Zelda Amiibo, and unfortunately, Fi says that she doesn't recognize any of them. So as far as I have discovered as of this point, the only Amiibo that functions in Skyward Sword HD is the Zelda and Loftwing Amiibo. That's a little bit of a letdown if you ask me. They could have at least sprung for some paltry ingredients to help you with making potions or upgrading your equipment, kind of like how Hyrule Warriors does, but it is what it is. It would have been pretty cool if you got to do something similar to how Breath of the Wild gives you costumes of different Links from different versions of the games. That would have been cool. Maybe a Breath of the Wild tunic would have been sweet. I know this game predates all of them chronologically, but if Link can sport a Switch t-shirt in Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, I don't think it would be that big of a deal, but it's fine. As far as other games are concerned, I recently did a video about Amiibo functionality in Miitopia. Several Amiibo unlock cool costumes that you can use in that game, and I speculated the Zelda and Loftwing Amiibo would probably unlock Zelda's outfit, so I thought I'd give it a little test, and I'm pleased to report that it in fact does. I also tested it in Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and sadly it has no special functionality. It doesn't even have any shared functionality with the other Zelda Amiibo. It's recognized as pretty much just any old random thing. So you can get yourself some fish and meat and mushrooms and weeds or herbs or whatever. Now for those special edition Joy-Con. Here's what it looks like in the packaging. The depiction on the box looks phenomenal, but do the actual Joy-Con hold up? Let's bust this thing open and see for ourselves. Now bear with me, sometimes opening can be a bit of a process. Come to me, ha! Nope, that was really easy. Now for a closer look. As was previously stated in the Skyward Sword announcement trailer, each Joy-Con is modeled after one of Link's weapons. The left Joy-Con is styled in the fashion of the Hylian shield. It's that signature royal blue color with the emblematic royal family crest in red. It really pops against that darker blue. And we've got this nice gold embellishment pattern around the joystick, as well as some gold diamonds between the buttons. And the Hylian shield typically sports a silver border. We have something similar simulated here with that side slide-on piece. Just make sure you align your minuses. The right Joy-Con is styled in the fashion of the Master Sword. It has a unique gold pattern around the joystick, but the same gold diamond between the buttons, which lends a good sense of continuity between the two. It's also a much darker blue, almost bordering on purple, much the same color as the hilt of the Master Sword. But my favorite part about the right Joy-Con has to be that little Triforce pattern at the bottom. At certain angles, it completely disappears. At other angles, it almost looks like a darker, slightly depressed bevel, even though it's not, it's perfectly smooth. And then at other angles, it almost appears to glow from the reflection. It's actually really sleek and really nice. I've never exactly been excited about Joy-Con before, but I'll be the first to admit this is a handsome set. And just like the left Joy-Con, the right one also comes with that gray slide-on side piece. And at first glance, one could confuse the two of them as the same color, but they are subtly different. The right Joy-Con's gray is perhaps slightly cooler, it might have a little bit more blue in it, and is slightly lighter in tone. As I said, it looks fantastic. I know they're really difficult to grab stateside right now. Just like with the Zelda Amiibo, there weren't exactly what I would describe a ton of them, but each store seemed to have a few of them available upon opening. Again, I'm very grateful to my wife, who ventured out to pick these up for me. You are the best wife. I love you. All in all, it was a great day for me as a collector. I am sorry if you didn't happen to be quite as lucky, but I hope at least in some small way you enjoyed this up-close look. I've already been talking your ear off for way too long, so that's a wrap on another edition of Me Weekly. Thank you for spending some of your precious Friday with me. I'm gonna be back here again next Friday. I'm gonna be talking a lot more Skyward Sword HD, and who knows what other Nintendo news is gonna drop between now and then. I hope I can count on you to join me right back here. Until then, please have an amazing week. This is Hero TJ signing out. Thanks for playing.